Well, welcome everyone to the informational session for the 2026-2027 Engage Rural Civic Arts Cohort. Woo! We're so glad to see you all here, and we are excited to share more about this opportunity and hopefully answer any questions y'all have. So in a moment, you'll be introduced to Vivian. She and I will be working closely with the 5 selected community teams. So we wanted to start with a brief introduction to ourselves and what has brought us to this work. So in addition to being the creative executive officer with Department of Public Transformation, which we'll talk more about in a moment, I come to this work as a theater artist first, a civic artist that works in the medium of theater to amplify community stories, specifically small town and rural communities across the country. So a lot of our work is writing original site-specific musicals about place. And we work with communities to do like story circles, interviews, talking about the hopes and dreams of what they would like to see for their communities, and then turning them into large-scale musical theater productions, and often coupling that with opportunities to get actively involved in different community issues or opportunities that we see in that space. So that's just one way in which civic arts can show up. I'm also a fierce advocate for rural people and places. You can often find me in rooms yelling a lot about geographic equity and making sure that resources get distributed equitably throughout our state or throughout our country to small towns, rural, and tribal communities. So that's how I enter this work in addition to my role at DoPT. How about you, Vivian?
Yes, so I have been working with DoPT for about a year now, preparing our Engage Rural program for the exciting offerings that we have launched in 2026. I grew up in the mountains of Arizona and have been living in central Iowa for the past 13 years or so, though. I also have a background in theater and also in community development and sustainable agriculture. So my practice is really at the intersection of arts and civic engagement and environmental communication. So in addition to my work with Department of Public Transformation, I also work as community engagement director and an artistic producer with the Eco Theater Lab, which is a small arts collective based in Iowa. And we develop creative interdisciplinary initiatives that invite our communities into conversations about sustainability and community engagement. And I really believe in the necessity of arts-based and asset-based strategies to building community and addressing local challenges and opportunities. So I'm really, really excited to be sharing more about the Civic Arts Cohort opportunity with y'all today, and to eventually work with communities on implementing your own civic arts initiatives. And the pictures here are just images of some of the work I've done in barns and libraries and schools and cafes, where I think a lot of wonderful conversation and community building can happen in our places. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ash to share a brief intro to Department of Public Transformation.
Awesome. So for those of you that know us, this will be a little bit repeat. For those of you that don't, Department of Public Transformation, we're a rural-based, artist-led nonprofit. We develop creative strategies that strengthen connection, civic engagement, and equitable participation in rural places with artists at the helm. And we believe that rural communities already have the solutions, skills, and ideas and assets that they need to address challenges, but that historic underinvestment, extractive economies, and deficit narratives have fragmented many of our rural communities. So we seek to address that through our programs, and we work to address often prevalent challenges in rural communities of social isolation, rural blight, and narratives of deficit. But we like to reframe these challenges with abundance language. So perhaps the most relevant to the Engage Rural program. So we aim to tackle social isolation by cultivating community connection through creative placemaking and artist-led initiatives, projects, and residencies. Our programs address rural blight by amplifying rural communities as places of possibility, reimagining and revitalizing infrastructure to spark civic pride and sustain it by amplifying stories of abundance. We really believe strongly in rural culture and the voices of locally rooted rural artists, cultural workers, and community leaders, and that sharing our own authentic stories is the way that we can counteract some of the national narratives that are put upon rural people and places. Our approach focuses on 4 key strategies. We activate rural community assets. We connect rural leaders with creative strategies. We support rural artists and cultural workers directly, and we nurture the broader rural arts and culture field. And we really see Engage Rural at the intersection of all four of these strategies, and are excited to work with you on them. Our values, the way that we approach this work, our core values are play, deep compassion, reciprocal exchange, and intentional representation. And our guiding principles are to build trust, to prioritize connections, to cultivate creativity, shift those narratives that we mentioned earlier, and to do our best to lead with love at each step of the way. Our organization is rooted in Southwest Minnesota at the Yes House. If you've been to the Yes House, you can throw in the chat, I've been to the Yes House. Our place-based programs reach across Minnesota and the upper Midwest. And most recently, we added the Mountain West. But a number of our program offerings are also open to anyone, regardless of where they live. So we support creative gathering spaces and artist-led activations and place-based residencies nationally, and to tell the stories and advocate for rural creativity. Our team is based in 6 different states and has decades of experience in piloting and building programs in and with rural communities. We try to keep a bird's eye view of fieldwork that's happening across the country, and often operate as translators, connectors, pollinators, and promoting geographic equity and rural-urban solidarity. We wanted to just share this photo of our team to see how much support y'all will have as we go through the Engage Rural program. And then we invite you all to check out our website for all of our DoPT programs. We're not going to go through all of them today because we want to focus on Engage Rural, specifically the Engage Rural Civic Arts Cohort for community teams in Minnesota. But before we dive into the specifics of the call, we wanted to offer a few definitions that we hope will be helpful in understanding what we mean by civic arts and civic arts initiatives, and how they can be meaningful in rural communities. Sometimes these words can be a little jargony or mean a lot of different things. So we wanted to just lay out there how DoPT thinks about each of these terms. This might be helpful in your application process as well. So how DoPT defines civic engagement: anything relating to community decision-making, problem-solving, and support systems. Civic engagement refers not only to actions like voting or running for office, but also volunteering, neighboring, attending public meetings, participating in community events, contributing to community initiatives, any systems-wide work in which you are looking to better your community and getting engaged and involved in that process. A civic arts practice is one that actively uses art and creativity to bring people together, to spark conversations about those local issues, and encourage more people to take part in the solutions and in community and civic life in general. So then a civic arts project is created collaboratively in conversation with community leaders and residents to address specific social, cultural, or environmental challenges and opportunities in that local community. So these kinds of creative projects give an opportunity for artists, civic leaders, and their communities to work together to think about and come up with new ways to improve civic health. So this can look a lot of different ways, especially because each project should be really unique to the community and the issue that they are developed in and with. And our team at DoPT strongly believes in the importance of civic engagement and civic health in rural communities, and the role that artists can play in civic life. We have seen it in the work we do, and research shows across the country that artists can amplify the voices of residents, activate neighborhood assets, and foster stronger social fabric between local government and communities. And we hope you have seen this too, and we know you will through this program. So arts-based and people-centered approaches to civic engagement has been proven to do the following: to increase representation, transparency, and trust in local government. And these strategies, arts-based creative strategies, foster community connections, strengthen leadership and who's getting involved in leadership, and break down barriers to participation. So more people are engaging. This has been proven, and we recommend checking out the Municipal Artists Partnership Guide for a ton of resources, articles, deep dives, if you wanted to get a data geek on it, resources on this website that Vivian just put in the chat to explore more of the research and examples behind this work. So even though we know these benefits, Most resources for arts-based civic engagement efforts are often concentrated in urban areas, and that is why DoPT has launched Engage Rural as an initiative that is dedicated specifically to supporting rural artists and rural leaders as you all look to implement arts-based civic engagement in your communities. Since 2018, DoPT has actively addressed the need for this kind of programming. In 2019, we launched the Granite Falls, Minnesota City Artist in Residence program, one of the first of its kind in a town of its size in the country. And in 2022, we piloted some of the Engage Rural offerings that you're going to hear about today through what we called, at that time, the Rural Civic Arts Learning Lab. So we started with 3 rural Minnesota communities that went on a 6-month-long learning journey, and each launched right-sized civic arts initiatives in their communities. This was in partnership with the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. For every $1 invested in the participating communities projects, the teams averaged at least $2.97, so around $3, from other funding sources for creative community engaged projects. So again, the economic benefits of doing this kind of work are also present. And the participants in that first cohort continue to build on these efforts. This is a quote that I just love from Valerie Quist in the town of Tracy. "We thought civic arts were something big towns did. It just seemed out of reach for us. This program has been huge. We now have a budget line for civic arts in their city budget year after year." So the kind of systems change work really is possible. We have now, if you want to read more about that too, we've got an impact report. Vivian's going to put a link in the chat. We have now launched new offerings through Engage Rural, and you can find all of these offerings on our website, and the resources on our website would be beneficial to review as you prepare to apply for the 2026-2027 Civic Arts Cohort, which we'll focus on for the remainder of today's session. So that's the background and history. I'm going to pass it over to Vivian to share about the current call.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ash. So we are very excited to get into some of the details of the Engage Rural Civic Arts Cohort and the application process. Again, as we go through some of this information today, which is also you can find on our website, and we'll share the recording for this session. As we're going through all of this, please be thinking of questions that you might have, and feel free to put those in the Q&A box of the Zoom room, and we will get to those after we go over the details. So the Engage Rural Civic Arts Cohort is a year-long curated cohort experience for core teams based in rural Minnesota. Selected core teams will spend 12 months developing creative strategies for civic engagement in their communities. Department of Public Transformation will select 5 core teams who are based in rural communities with a population of 20,000 residents or fewer in Minnesota and the Native nations that share that geography. The Blandin Foundation has generously provided support for 2 rounds of the Minnesota Engage Rural Civic Arts Cohort. So we do just want to note that this means that there will be a 2026 to 2027 cohort and a 2027 to 2028 cohort. And a huge thank you to the Blandin Foundation for making this work possible. So we want to make sure to highlight what selected community teams will receive as a part of this cohort experience. Each team and their communities that they're working with will receive $12,000 in project funding to design and implement a locally defined arts-based civic engagement initiative. And part of the cohort experience, which we'll go over the different phases of that experience in a couple of minutes, part of that experience will be figuring out, with support from Ash and myself and our team, what those projects might look like, what the budgets will look like accordingly, and then how to implement the funding in the way that best supports you and your community goals. Core teams will also coordinate site visits with Ash and myself, with DoPT staff, to support project planning and local engagement. Site visits will be scheduled in collaboration with each of the communities and will be at no cost to the cohort members. So just a note there, and Ash and I are very excited for the opportunity to see what's happening throughout Minnesota in terms of arts-based civic engagement. Travel and lodging costs for 3 core team members to attend 2 in-person cohort gatherings hosted at the Yes House in Granite Falls, Minnesota will be covered as part of the cohort experience. Cohort members will have access to engage rural resources with strategies and recommendations for arts-based civic engagement, and those resources will be able to be shared with your broader community as well. Core teams will receive curated technical assistance that are really tailored to your community goals, capacity, and context. This assistance, in addition to the site visits, includes monthly check-ins with our team to discuss updates, resources that could be helpful, project design and implementation strategies, and anything else that comes to mind. These check-ins are pretty informal and are just an opportunity to have someone to bounce ideas with, brainstorm as you're developing what these projects could look like in the places where you live. Those check-ins might also include direct support with asset mapping, which is something we focus a lot on, looking at the resources that are already in your community, how you can bring those into these initiatives effectively, and then navigating what those community challenges and opportunities are that have brought you to this opportunity in the first place. And then cohort members will be part of a supportive peer network with the other 4 communities, and that will include bi-monthly virtual workshops and informal gatherings. Those will be facilitated by DoPT staff, and we will also bring in some guest speakers to host some workshops as well. And then we will provide support with project promotion and documentation, and that includes some video, photography, and storytelling work to capture the projects that you will be working on, the process of your experience in the cohort, so that we have documentation, yes, to remember the experience that we've all had together in the cohort, but also so that we're capturing the work that y'all are doing so that DoPT can share that work, but also so that you can share that work to hopefully get more support and funding for the work that you're doing and continue it long after the cohort experience ends. Speaking of the cohort experience, we wanted to go over what the 12 months will look like for all selected communities. So the first phase, which will be between September and November of 2026, will focus on introductions and grounding an understanding of what arts-based civic engagement looks like and how it would apply to your specific community and local context. So really want to highlight this first date on the slide here on September 20th through 21st, 2026. That will be the cohort kickoff gathering in Granite Falls, Minnesota. And all core teams will be participating in that kickoff gathering, and 2 to 3 core team members will be able to join that. And 2 to 3 core team members, travel and lodging will be covered. A reminder there. Then from October to November 2026, we will have a variety of programming offerings for cohort participants, including opportunities to explore arts-based civic engagement resources through our Engage Rural program, opportunities to identify what your community and project goals are. Again, that will be through check-ins with us, check-ins with the broader cohort, explorations into those resources, asset mapping to figure out what you want to try to develop and implement over the next 12 months. During October and November will be an opportunity to also build your community advisory group. So core teams of 3 to 5 community members will be applying for the Civic Arts cohort through that application process. But then DoPT, we always encourage bringing more community members into the process. And one of the ways we do that is through developing community advisory groups where you're pulling from different sectors and folks who might want to be involved in implementing the initiative. And we'll help walk cohort members through what building a community advisory group looks like. We will map community assets and assess community readiness so that the size and scope of the project that you're implementing matches what your community is looking for. And then again, through this whole time, there will be ongoing one-on-one technical assistance, monthly check-ins with us, and those bi-monthly virtual cohort gatherings and workshops. Phase 2 is planning, and that will be December 2026 through February 2027. And we'll focus on building skills to collaborate across sectors, designing your arts-based civic engagement initiative with all of the foundation that you've built in phase 1, developing that project timeline and budget, how your team can best use that $12,000 in project funding, and exploring impact evaluation strategies to make sure y'all can capture what was most effective about the process, what you want to bring forward, how you can talk about the experience and the project that you're creating with your community at large and with potential future funders and partners, et cetera. And again, those ongoing resources will continue to be available throughout the entire 12-month cohort experience. And finally, phase 3 will be implementation of your arts-based civic engagement initiative. That will be March through July 2027, where your core team will implement and document the initiative that you've been planning. During that time, there will be opportunities to consult with our staff, not only through those monthly check-ins, but also through the site visits we mentioned. We will guide cohort members through an evaluation and reflection of your experience, and we will make sure there are opportunities to celebrate your work, both locally and with the entire cohort, which includes participating in a cohort closing celebration in Granite Falls, Minnesota, and that will be August 23rd through 24th, 2027. Those dates are on our website and in the application materials because we want to make sure people go ahead and have those on their calendars when they apply. We're going to move to some information about eligibility just to make sure this is clear for everyone. Again, you can refer to this information on the website as well, but eligible communities and core teams that are representing those communities must be located in rural Minnesota or Native nations that share this geography. And those communities will need to have a population of 20,000 or less. Cohort communities need to be invested in developing and implementing an arts-based civic engagement initiative and led by a committed core team. This team is a group of 3 to 5 community members, which includes at least one artist or cultural worker, one civic leader. This could be formal or informal, and one community activator. And the primary contact that will have to be listed in the letter of agreement with Department of Public Transformation must be a community-driven entity with an EIN number and a bank account. We're going to break this down a little bit just to make sure these eligibility guidelines are really clear. So when we talk about rural at DoPT, we know that there are lots of definitions of what rural means. And we work with folks who are living in rural communities as they define rural across the country. But for a lot of our programming, including the Engage Rural Civic Arts cohort, we focus on communities with a population of 20,000 or less. So this opportunity is open to teams, again, who are based in Minnesota rural communities, including tribal communities and Native nations that share this geography with a population of 20,000 or less. When we say invested, what we mean is that the Engaged Rural Civic Arts cohort is open to teams who are invested in the entirety of the cohort experience as described in phases 1, 2, and 3. So we just really encourage you and your entire core team to look at all of those cohort activities that will take place across the 12 months and make sure that y'all are ready to fully participate in those 3 phases. We want to break down what we mean by these different members of the core team. So again, this team is a group of 3 to 5 community members from different sectors who are committed to facilitating creative collaboration and seeing the arts-based civic engagement initiative through to the end. So these teams include at least one of each of the following: an artist cultural worker, a civic leader, and a community activator. We also want to say right off the bat that we recognize that folks may identify as one of these representatives, but also may identify with all 3 of artist, cultural worker, civic leader, community activator, or with 2 of them. We recognize that that will probably happen a lot. And in the application, we just ask that you identify who are the members of your core team and which of these areas, even if there are multiple, that they identify with. So who is an artist, cultural worker? Artists and cultural workers are experienced in creative problem solving and communication techniques. An artist is anyone who is creative, resourceful, inspired, and driven to collaborate across all sectors of public, private, and civic life. This includes mediums such as visual, performance, multimedia, literary, social and civic, culinary, land, traditional, folk, textile events, and more. We mean at DoPT by artist, culture bearers, craftspeople, artisans, hobbyists, contractors, handy people, and more. An artist cultural worker on your core team could be an artist themselves or someone who works directly with artists. Civic leaders are familiar with the systems that impact and are impacted by the civic issues that y'all would like to explore in an arts-based civic engagement effort. So civic leaders include anyone who has taken on a leadership role in civic life. That could be elected, staffed, volunteer, formal, or informal. Anyone who has the ability to influence change at a community-wide level is a civic leader. This could be community organizers, local government officials, tribal council, nonprofit leaders, city staff, faith leaders, youth organizers, influential neighbors, aunties and grandmas, elders, and more. A community activator is informed about the civic issues that your specific arts-based civic engagement effort is hoping to explore, and they are invested in community-based solutions. So a community activator is anyone who is an instigator, organizer, connector, and cheerleader of this specific effort and experience. They are the ones ready to show up first, roll up their sleeves, and encourage others to join the journey. They are actively involved in community life and the specific civic issue or issues that have inspired the project or your application. We ask in the application for you to talk about the challenges and opportunities you're interested in exploring. In this way, community activators help represent the broader community in addition to the advisory groups that we mentioned will help you develop throughout the cohort experience. We do invite you to check out one of the Engage Rural resources on our website. It's called Purpose and Makeup of a Core Team. This includes some more information about how to form a core team. If you have questions about that, Ash will add the link to that in the chat. And also, if you have any further questions about these definitions, feel free to reach out as well. And then entity, again, the primary contact who's listed in the letter of agreement must be a community-driven entity with an EIN number and a bank account. And we just wanted to provide some examples of what an eligible entity would look like that meets these requirements. Examples of eligible entities include municipal, tribal, or county governments, quasi-government entities like regional development commissions or regional arts councils, local nonprofit organizations, or fiscally sponsored groups, including but not limited to Main Street or downtown organizations, art centers, preservation groups, historical societies, or community development organizations, chambers of commerce, cooperatives, including but not limited to art collectives, restaurant or cafe or grocery cooperatives, and public libraries. Some entities that we just want to note are not eligible for this specific opportunity as the lead applicant include K through 12 schools, individual businesses or LLCs that don't have a community-driven team or aren't connected through a fiscal sponsorship, churches, and that's because programming can't be affiliated with a religion, and private philanthropic organization or community foundations. Now, Ash and I do want to note that these entities are not eligible as the lead applicant, but they can be partners on the project, and we encourage partnering with a wide variety of entities and organizations and individuals in your communities. If you have a unique situation that doesn't fit into any of these examples, you're not sure whether it's eligible, please feel free to reach out to us and we can help with some guidance there. How our review committee and DoPT, how we are going to be looking at applications and assessing them with selection criteria include the following 4 areas that we want to outline here. Selected cohort communities will meet the following criteria. Community connection. There will be an identified community challenge or opportunity that will be addressed through the Arts-Based Civic Engagement Initiative. The core team will need to demonstrate an understanding of and or connection to their local community and those challenges and opportunities that are being addressed. Capacity. There will need to be an active core team who will meet, plan, and work together. Core team members must commit to participating fully in Engage Rural Civic Arts cohort activities between September 2026 and August 2027. 2 to 3 team members must be able to attend both Engage Rural Civic Arts cohort in-person gatherings, and at least one team member must be able to serve as the primary contact to communicate and work regularly with DoPT. We'll also be assessing applications based on readiness. So we talk about how the team needs to be ready to launch an arts-based civic engagement initiative within the cohort timeline, but we want to clarify what we mean by that. So the application will need to demonstrate enthusiasm for the process and openness to new ideas and approaches. And readiness from DoPT's perspective will be determined by the following: clear commitment from core team members, strong community relationships that can be identified by core team members, and concrete civic engagement challenges and opportunities that the core team and their community are hoping to explore through the experience. And then cohort and project diversity, the selection process, we will consider diversity of geographic locations, populations, civic engagement challenges and opportunities, and demographics, so that we have a really strong cohort that can also help each other through that peer support network. And for the selection process and timeline, we mentioned this before, but we will have a review committee of DoPT staff members and Minnesota Rural Civic Arts leaders who will consider applications based on those project selection criteria. And then DoPT staff members will determine the final selections. Some key dates to keep in mind: June 17th is the application deadline. So the online application forms will be due at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. In late July 2026 will be finalist interviews. Those will be 30 minutes via Zoom. And in early August 2026, we will share notifications and public announcement of the 5 selected core teams. Note that for the narrative questions, we have provided multiple questions to guide your responses in that online application form. And we just want to recommend responding to all of those questions in your answers, since they do align with the selection criteria, and that's why those guiding questions are there for you. Before we enter into the Q&A, we just also want to share another reminder that DoPT's Engage Rural program not only offers the Minnesota Civic Arts cohort these next 2 years, but also the following offerings, programming, and resources. Our Discover track includes free resources, which will be helpful to review as you apply for the Civic Arts cohort, and all of those are available on our website, so check that out. Starting in January 2027, we will also be offering the Connect track pilot, which is also generously funded for 2 years by the Blandin Foundation. The Connect track is a community of practice for rural leaders and will include resources, consultations, workshops, and networking opportunities, so keep an eye out for that. And then our design track is also available now, and that is a way that we offer curated contract-based services. You can check out our website for more information about that. Reach out to Ash and myself if you are interested in the design track. So check out our website for more information about all of that. But we are now going to move into Q&A. We
Awesome.
know that
Vivian, thank you so much. That was a lot of information. So I'm going to give you just a quick moment to breathe while I answer some of the cues that came in before we dive into the ones. Yeah. So we had a few questions come in during the course of the webinar so far. Feel free to keep adding those. We'll kind of bounce back and forth between questions coming in and questions that we've already received to try to cover all of our bases. So Alicia asks, how is community defined in this aspect? By location or by those who are in community with each other? And the answer is both. We definitely do need a identified community that you can name is the hub or core community that you'll be working with. But we also know that often rural communities work together in a region. So if you just are being specific about kind of this is the community that most of us will be focusing on or working on. However, this community operates as a hub for lots of rural areas or folks that, are kind of coming from across the region. But we do need the core community that you'll be working with to be with a population of 20,000 or less. So please do keep that in mind. And then when you're talking about for those who are in community with each other, as was mentioned in the selection criteria, we do like to see that those in the core team are really invested and involved in community with each other, but also with the broader community. So strong applicants will be able to identify both of those things. And if you have a unique or specific example or challenge that you want to run through with us that is more detailed than that, please go ahead and reach out so we can help you figure out if this is the right opportunity for you. Will all of the links sent during this meeting be sent to the registration list after the meeting as well? The answer is yes. We will send out the links and the recording in a follow-up email. So if you weren't, there was a lot in the chat. And if you didn't have access to that chat while we were going through all of this, yes, you will receive that in a follow-up email. Next question. If your core team is larger than 5 individuals, do you want for the purpose of this grant for us to only list 5 members? We would recommend yes, because of space and just being able to really clearly identify that, the 5 individuals most committed or that are if you have multiple partners, maybe one representative from each of those organizations or those sectors or those community demographics be listed on the core team. Now, I will say out loud, for the travel purposes of the gatherings, we have enough resources to support up to 3. So that we've had in the past people having to negotiate some of that. So maybe you send some to the first one and some to the second one, but just to name that we have a hard cap at 3 for those who could travel. And the goal and idea there is for those 3 core team members that come to the first and second gathering are able to share out that what was learned or gathered or gained from that, those in-person touch points with the rest of their team. Now, we will have those site visits as well. And so during those site visits, we can really extend that invitation and we can really work with your core team to curate what that looks like. So we will have some opportunities to meet with more folks, but that will be, 3 people for the visit.
And as
I
we
would encourage you
mentioned,
sticking to five in the application.
And as we mentioned, too, part of what we recommend for these kinds of initiatives is to have a core team that can really, be at all of the meetings, be fully invested in the project from the beginning, but also extending who is involved in developing the project and implementing the project through a community advisory group. So if you have a lot more than 5 people involved, that's actually wonderful. That means there's more investment in the initiative from the get-go. And some of those folks, even if they're not involved in every part of the process in terms of travel, in terms of the application, there are ways to involve them in other ways.
Great. And then the last question in the Q&A before, there's a few in the chat here as well. But this last one in the Q&A, if your community is right around 20,000 people, how do you know if it is eligible? That's a great question. If it's give or take 100 people or so, we understand that ruralness is a hard, nebulous line. So I would say if you can apply and share with us how either your community is a rural hub, how you're serving rural residents, if you have like rural culture at the core of what you're bringing, if it's, a primarily agricultural community, just really share with us in the application. But know that this program is designed for communities of 20,000 or less. And so that will be considered in the application process. If you're much over 20,000, I don't think this will be a strong application. If you're like 20,143 or something like that, yes, we can, that is a little bit flexible there, but know that this is really designed for smaller communities.
I also saw that there are a couple questions in the chat, which we can answer now. And then also in case if we missed any other questions in the chat, just make sure to move them to the Q&A and we'll make sure to see them. But we had a question, there seems to be a great focus on process in the phases and a generous amount of support. Given this, how firm of a project is recommended for the application versus being open to development during the process? That's a great question and actually aligns with the question that we've gotten via email about, does our application need to include a budget? So the answer to both of those is you do not need to have a clearly defined project nor a budget in your application. On the application form, we ask for you to clearly identify the community challenges and opportunities that you and your core team are hoping to address through the Civic Arts cohort experience. But you're absolutely right. The focus on phases is very intentional, that the beginning is really foundational to exploring what does art-based civic engagement look like? what challenges and opportunities does my community have? What assets can we pull from? And how, with all of that information, can we develop a project and then a budget that makes sense for our capacity and local context? So yes, it's very open to development during the process, and there will be guidance through that.
Great. I can take this next one. For us, we partner with several other nonprofits. My program works in Big Stone County, Minnesota, Millbank, South Dakota, and two of our partners are in Ortonville, Minnesota. Does that cause an issue? I'm assuming funds can only be used in Minnesota. So the community, the primary community and the primary core team must be based in a Minnesota community. So if Ortonville is the primary community and the core team is based in Ortonville, yes, this project is eligible, even if some of the artists, again, boundaries and borders are a little blurry. So, and we know that and we recognize that. And so if the main source, the lead applicant and the main community that we are working with is in the boundaries of Minnesota, you are eligible to apply. And then if with your $12,000 project budget, you decide that, you know, you want to work with an artist who's just 20 miles down the road, but it happens to be in another state or in a tribal nation, that those project dollars, we want a lot of that to stay in Minnesota communities, but we also recognize that boundaries are a little blurry. So you're still eligible to apply, but the core community and the core team must be based in a community of 20,000 or less in the state boundaries of Minnesota.
Great. Okay. Feel free to continue adding questions to the Q&A. We are going to go through a couple additional questions that we received prior to the informational session in case these are helpful for other folks. We had a question, if our team has received support from DoPT in the past, are we eligible to apply? The answer there is yes. If you are currently receiving support or if you've received support in the past through another of our programs, you are still eligible to apply for the Civic Arts Cohort opportunity. We also had a couple of questions about partnerships. Do we have to partner with multiple organizations to apply? No, you don't, but your core team just needs to include representation from the three areas that we've described, right? Arts and culture, civic leadership, and community activators. And part of the application narrative questions ask you to identify each of your core team members and which of these areas that they represent. And again, they might represent multiple, and we've laid out some of those guiding questions to help you walk through the narrative piece of it. A similar question, do we have to partner with city or tribal government to apply? This question is connected to this idea of civic leadership, I think. Do we have to have a city partner? And the answer there is no. That your representative from civic leadership can be, but does not have to be, someone from local government. So we recommend for you to review our definition of civic leader with an emphasis on we look at civic leadership in both formal and informal capacities. We recognize there are a lot of people in our community who are interacting with those systems that impact and are impacted by the civic issues that you may be exploring. And that definition is expansive.
As you go to the next slide, Vivian, I'm going to hop in with another question from Chris in the chat.
Yes, please do.
Would a township that has no municipality located in would a township that has no municipality located in it qualify as a community under 20,000 for the Engage Rural Cohort? Absolutely. Townships and unincorporated communities are absolutely eligible to apply. As long as the population is under 20,000, we do not need it to be an official or incorporated community. So yes, you are eligible, Chris.
Great. This next question is a little bit connected to something we talked about earlier, but does every member of our core team need to be based in the community that's applying? And we just want to emphasize that, again, that strong applications will come from core teams who are based in rural Minnesota communities with those populations of 20,000 or less. So as an applicant, you'll need to clearly identify that your team has that understanding of and or connection to the local community and has strong community relationships. We received a question about participation from youth, which we're very excited about and always encourage question was, is this only for 18 plus, or can middle schoolers and high schoolers who want to actively participate more do so? Our response to that is that for team members who are potentially, signing agreements and traveling and coming to Granite Falls and all of that, those core team members do need to be 18 plus, just for DoPT's administrative work there. But we encourage youth to be involved in advisory groups and the community process as much as possible. A note that we had listed school districts as not eligible as the lead entity, again, related to structural reasons there, but school districts can, or individual schools can definitely be partners as well. And then we also had one other question that came in that was how much startup capital is needed to be successful with this grant. And there are no requirements for startup capital, and match funding is not needed for this opportunity.
And just to say out loud, Kim, we see your note here about volunteering to be a part of the selection process. So thank you for that. We'll make note of that. And just give it another minute or so for anyone to send any final questions, and to make sure that you know that you can always reach out to me or Vivian or a member of our team. We'll direct you to the right place if questions come up as you're writing your applications, which are due again on June 17th. 11:59 p.m. Central. Any more?
Feel free, yeah, if you're typing something, feel free to go ahead and do it, even though I changed the slide. We just want to make sure we put up our contact information here, our website again, in case you haven't gotten a chance to visit that and see all of the details about the Civic Arts Cohort and other Engage Rural resources.
Cool.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining today. Again, if you have additional questions, send them our way. I mentioned this at the beginning, but we will continue adding to the FAQs on our website as we receive additional questions via email. If they're common questions, that might be helpful for other folks. So it might be helpful to check back there every once in a while. Within about a week, we'll send a follow-up email with the recording from today, and we'll also add that recording to the website. And we are very excited to seeing your applications come in, and also just a huge thank you from all of us at DoPT for the work that we know all of you are doing in your communities across Minnesota and beyond.
Thank you all for being here. We received one last question about making it known for attendees to contact us as rural arts organizations we can connect. We didn't put a note on the registration for people to feel okay about sharing contact information, so we're not able to do that this time. But if you want to share your contact info in the chat for other folks to reach out to you, please feel free to do that. And know that we have lots of other opportunities to connect with rural arts organizations across the state, across the field. Just keep an eye on DoPT's website, newsletter, and we'll continue to help you connect with other rural arts organizations. But we can't share this contact info this time because we didn't get permission in advance. But feel free to share yours in the chat, and hope for other opportunities to meet more folks. Cool.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much,
Thank you all. Take care.
Excited for your applications to come in.